Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's event where we're going to be talking about championship in the workplace. My name is Christine Vainoska-Twidwell, and I'm the Executive Director of Latvian American Chamber of Commerce. And it is my honor today to bring this event in coordination with AmCham Latvia. So before we dive into what we're going to talk about and setting the stage, I am delighted to bring on Inga and Evita, who are members, volunteer leaders in AmCham Latvia that are really active in working on this effort and bringing exciting topics of conversation like this to various audiences. So I am going to bring on the two of them to share a little bit more about that work. So without further ado, welcome Inga and Evita.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I'm Evita, and Inga is also somewhere here. Inga, are you here? Inga is coming.
Yes.
There she is. Hi, Inga.
Yes. Hi, everybody.
Hi. Yes, we are co-hosts, co-leaders for this group. EmpowerHER group is actually the newest working group within AmCham in Latvia, and we are very, very happy that this group has been established, and we are very honored to be leaders for this group. The goal of this group is actually this year is dedicated. We learn, we raise awareness, we understand what kind of challenges and opportunities women face in their professional journeys. And is there something we can do about it? So today's workshop, the seminar is actually very, very important. And it is such value added there because we will compare actually how it goes in America and United States and how it is happening in Latvia. Is there some cultural issues also towards this? So very, very excited about today's speakers. And also I want to say thank you, Christina, for this opportunity. I hope this is first one, but not the last one, seminar that we create together. Inga, is there something you would like to say?
Yeah, I just want to add that our group is super new. We just started end of last year, and I think our first events were this year. So more events will come. We are meeting in a smaller group with the ladies. We had already one event on site. This is online event, and I think more will come. Just please follow the news and emails what I share. And if you have any questions or any ideas, please let me or Evita to know. And yeah, happy to hear. And if you want to join the group, please welcome. So we'll be happy to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know we are honored to have a really esteemed group of speakers today. So I am so excited to introduce everyone and just to share a little bit more and hear about what they have to say about this important topic. So without further ado, I want to kind of help set the stage on what we are going to be discussing today. So first of all, today's conversation is incredibly important, and we're going to be addressing championship in the workplace, a concept that goes beyond titles and performance metrics. We're going to be exploring what it truly means to champion one another, especially across cultural, geographic, and gender lines. In the truest form, championship means speaking someone's name in rooms they're not in. It's the act of recommending a colleague for a role or amplifying their idea when it's overlooked, advocating for their growth, especially when there's no immediate benefit to yourself. It's leadership through presence and intent and not just position. In the United States, workplace culture has long rewarded individual achievement and ambition. However, we're seeing a shift, and we'll talk a little bit more about that today. I'm sure esteemed speakers will speak about that as well. The shift is towards quiet leadership and sponsorship, where successful professionals are judged not just by what they accomplish, but also who they lift up as they climb. In the Baltic states and in Europe, particularly in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, there's a deep respect for resilience, community, and professionalism. Yet here too, we're seeing emergence of more informal mentorship and peer-to-peer support. The next generation of leaders is increasingly expected to serve as connectors and champions for others, not only within their teams, but also across industries and across borders in this ever-evolving global world. Now we're going to be briefly looking at how gender plays a role in this conversation. According to 2024 McKinsey report, women both in the US and in Europe are still underrepresented in leadership, are far less likely to have sponsors, people in positions of power who actively advocate for them. And yet women are more likely to mentor others, often informally and without recognition. There's a disconnect between who does the work of championship and who receives it. If we are serious about building the healthier, high-performing workplaces, we must normalize and reward active championing others, regardless of gender or background. So today, that's going to be what we're going to talk quite a bit about. We have a number of really exciting questions that I can't wait to hear the perspectives of our various speakers. So I'm going to be bringing on our panelists. So give me 1 second as I navigate the virtual stage here for just a moment. So first up, we are going to be bringing Scott Hall. Scott is based here in Kansas City, and I'm extremely honored to introduce him. He's the Vice President of Development at Van Trust Real Estate here in Kansas City, a privately owned real estate development company, offices across the United States. Previous, Scott served in senior leadership position at the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, where he led Chamber's work on various projects and issues, including international trade, public health, and early childhood education. So we are really excited to have Scott join us today.
Christine, thank you. It's great to be with this group. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone, wherever you may be in the world.
Next up, I'm going to be bringing up Ginta. Ginta Lambergs is in East Coast, which we are really excited to have her join today. Ginta has worked in financial industry and tech for over 2 decades, and she's currently focused on coaching product teams on how to advance their product strategy and adopt better practices for their product delivery. She's passionate about helping build high-performing teams, coaching and mentoring team members, especially focused on supporting women entering the tech and finance industries. She's also heavily engaged with Start School and Riga Tech Girl programs. So I'm sure we'll hear a little bit more about that from Ginta. So we're super excited to have Ginta as well.
Thank you, Christina.
Yes. Next up, we are going to be bringing on Ramona. Excuse me, Ramona, if you could join us and come off mic and camera, we would love to have you. Ramona Latvia is a forward thinker leader dedicated to driving change and innovation with the healthcare sector. She actively seeks opportunities to experiment and capture new potentials. She's the country president for Baltics for Novartis, and through her passion for developing diverse cross-functional and cross-country teams, she fosters collaboration and partnership, demonstrating empathy and high-level trust and respect. So we are, again, honored to have Ramona as well. And last but not
Yeah, thanks a lot for introduction and hello to everyone.
Yes, exciting. And last but not least, we have Bogdan, who's going to be joining us. And Bogdan is a leader for Microsoft. He's based in Romania. And we are excited to have him. He's a father of 3 daughters. And yeah, he's leader of Microsoft Central Europe. So hopefully I did not leave anything exciting out.
No, definitely the first part, worthwhile mentioning. And thank you for the introduction, Christine. Great to be here with everyone and honored for the invitation.
Yes, absolutely. Again, I'm so excited for today's conversation. And I'm really looking forward to each of your takes on this. And so I think it is only worthy to jump right in. I would love to have each of you answer this question. I touched on it a little bit in the introductory notes, but how do you personally define championship in the workplace? And is that different from mentorship or sponsorship? So I think in the order that I brought you on, Scott, I'll put you first on the spot. I'd love to hear your take on it.
Sure. Thanks. And thanks again, Christine, for having me on. I think, Christine, you did a fabulous job in your introduction talking about championship in the workplace. I think two words that in that description you offered that are really important to me as I think about this are intent and presence. And specifically intent and presence when the person or persons that you're championing are not in the room. That is an incredibly important part of championship. And it is part to me of what distinguishes it from mentorship or sponsorship. Much of mentorship happens in the room, much of sponsorship happens in the room. Championship is a more elevated mode of advocacy where you're thinking about someone both when you are with them and when you are not.
Yeah, thank you. Ginthe, would love to hear your thoughts on that too.
Thanks, Christina. I think you both, Scott and you, described it very well. The only thing I would probably add from my point of view, it's a bit broader stance than mentorship and sponsorship, because as Scott mentioned, it's not just those very sort of targeted conversations with the individual or helping them to decide on their career, but also small and subtle actions like recognizing someone publicly without any sort of motive or alternative kind of outcome from that for you. I also think it's very closely tied to the company culture. When you as an associate or individual are trusted, recognized in the environment, in the culture and your company, you're more likely to be a champion of your colleagues. You're more likely to be open to embrace that when you interact with others.
Absolutely. Ramana, your take on championship and then how it's different from mentorship and sponsorship.
Yeah, thank you very much for opportunity to share. Personally, me, I hear and I was into this concept or definition the first time. So for me, it was really interesting to a little bit to think what is the real difference and maybe a couple of elements or maybe to start what it's not fully separate. We can find elements of mentorship and sponsorship in if we discuss championship concept, but the flavor is different. And when you become, let's say, a more mature, more experienced leader, you are more towards championship because you really care about unlocking full potential. This is your target. Because mentoring, you can go broad, you can go deep, but you do not have obligation or person do not have expectation what you will force or you make them to make bigger career. Then sponsorship, maybe it's already kind of alignment, agreement, and this is obligation to advance person career. And championship is more recognizing strengths, more providing opportunities for growth, and of course celebrating success if you see what person is making progress and you see result. So for leader and for many years already in the role of leadership, I think championship is a critical part, and you need to reflect, to come back and to evaluate how you do this part.
Yeah, absolutely. Bogdan.
For me, this is it's a great topic Christine. First of all, well, because as you kindly introduced me, for me, this starts at home with my 3 beautiful daughters that I'm growing every day, and teaching them or learning how to inspire them to reach out to their full potential, and transitioning this into the workplace, particularly the word championship for us is very meaningful, because in Microsoft we use this as an allyship concept when we are talking about enabling, empowering, and elevating talent across the board. And especially when we're looking at the resources that we put forward and we bring forward to enable women, to empower women, to accelerate their growth and career choices. I liked what was said previously about how we are driving career opportunities and the opportunity to grow. Okay, so for us, this is a core belief that is anchored in our values as a company. And of course, using the marketing lingo, one of the big statements that we bring every day when we are talking about Microsoft is how we empower people to achieve, okay, to achieve their potential, to achieve more, to achieve their growth ambitions, and so on. And in this case, I think it starts pretty simple. If we allyship, if we work together, joining forces, helping others discover, their strengths, discover their areas of growth and development. And in the workplace where, everyone talks about career, promotions, growth, coaching, and whatnot, this is very important. So we live this set of values every day in what we do in the workplace. And luckily for us, we also have the numbers. Microsoft is a very analytic and digital number-driven company. So plenty of numbers to back this up. Plenty of forums in which we are bringing forward the best of our colleagues, the best of our talents.
So I think it's a really good follow-up question to ask you, Bogdan, about looking globally, how various workplace cultures differ in terms of recognizing and supporting others. So how do you see in your specific geographic experience this championship and recognition show up?
Beautiful question. And I think we should start with the local culture. We are a global company, and we operate in geographies all over the world. I would say, maybe with the exception of the Northern Pole, maybe there is no place on Earth where we don't have a subsidiary. But the local culture is actually relevant. And I think the nuances that this brings into the conversation are very relevant on how we are supporting and how we are addressing the local flavor, when it comes to championing and empowering women. And my responsibilities are quite wide geographically. It ranges from the Baltics all the way to Pakistan and Mongolia. So any of those territories could be a very interesting conversation about culture and integration. But what we like to say, we think global and we execute local. This actually means that in pretty much all the places where we are present, we bring forward exactly like we're here, like we're having this afternoon, communities. We build communities. We call them employee resource groups, of lack of a better name. And one of the strongest is Women at Microsoft, which has a lot of chapters, women in tech, women programmers, women in cybersecurity, families, champions of pancakes and whatnot. But everything speaks to the local flavor. And our job as leaders is making sure that we enable this, making sure that, we leave room for people to come forward, to have a voice, to express themselves. We listen, of course, and we try to empower them.
Same kind of pivot maybe to Scott on a US-based experience, workplace culture and recognizing, supporting others. From kind of your US lens, what are some of the things that you find is differing?
Yeah, this is a really interesting idea here in the United States. And Christine referenced a shift, and I'm going to get to the shift in a second. But before we talk about the shift, let's talk about the history. And the history of culture in the workplace in the United States is rooted in some ways in our nation's history, and specifically in our history as pioneers, right? So those who understand the history of the United States, it was generally settled east, moving east to west by European settlers. And as those communities moved to the West, there was an every person for themselves mentality. It was, you were sent out into the Western United States with very little support from the rest of the community here. And so that sort of frontier mentality is something that we still see here in much of the United States workplace. And specifically, that's even more true in places in the country like where Christine and I are, which is in the center of the United States. We are at the place where westward expansion really launched in many regards here in Kansas City, Missouri. What you see, though, and Christine alluded to, is a shift that's happening here in the United States. That is gradual. It's certainly happening over time. There's not any one moment that you can point to in my mind that says this is when we started or this is when we will finish. But there is a different mentality, a more communal mentality, something probably that is more common in many European countries, that is beginning to permeate more commonly in corporate leadership. I don't think that is disconnected from the emerging presence of women in corporate leadership in the United States. And in fact, what most of the research will tell you is that that approach is far more successful than the quote unquote every man for themselves mentality that has been present in a lot of corporate America throughout its founding, certainly for its first 250 years. And I think, again, as we move forward, what you're going to see is an approach that's more successful is one where that approach is not the preferred approach, but it's one of allyship that includes and sort of promotes allyship, mentorship, and the idea that we are all better if we are better together.
That's a really good point to touch on, that shift, because I wanted to get Ginta's and Ramon's perspective on the generational shift and how are we seeing folks advocate for their peers in both Europe and in the US. So Ginta, I'm going to jump to you first of looking at the generational changes and how that's influencing it.
So I think Scott already alluded to that change and change with more women being at the leadership positions. The other shift that I've observed is with the millennial generation entering workforce, now being the biggest generation working today. There was a certain change and shift because they were more focused on purpose of work. They were more focused on impact that they can make at work, and also demanded a different style of leadership. So different approach to how leaders engaged in workforce and in workplace. There was a lot of debate probably 8-10 years ago, what will happen with millennials entering the workforce and becoming the biggest working generation. If you're particularly interested, there was a pretty big talk that Simon Sinek did on millennials and workplace and kind of alluded to both sides, the positives and the negatives. But let's focus on positives. So what happened, there was more this community building that was as a result of this generation coming in and looking at why are we doing certain things, not just what the results are. There were more the networking groups, employee interest groups that Bogdan alluded to that were more formalized in workplaces. More recognition programs either were reestablished or started anew, and more informal peer recognition opportunities like platforms where you can recognize your peers without involving your managers or leaders. You can simply say notes and publicly recognize each other. So I think some of those things that I've seen with the new generations coming into workplace.
Thank you, Ginta. I think you're absolutely right. Ramon, maybe in your experience, what are some of the generational things that you've seen?
Maybe just to start from positive side, what I'm really excited following this new generation, because dynamic speed and how they jump into processes and conversation is enormous. And this dynamic, I think, coming from what millenniums or what we discuss, or Gen Z generation, they already born, let's say, with technologies, and for them to connect, to make conversation from different continent, to find a friend, it's absolutely no issue. They do it automatically. They feel okay. For them, virtual conversation is very, very natural. They don't need, let's say, to feel this regular connection. So this technological advancement making difference, and we see another. I think this generation is more collaborative. They wanted to be kind of group. They value inclusiveness. They are easy into do common things. What makes also advocacy for peers or for group members much easier. And one more thing which also quite natural, and I see it's quite significantly shift versus, let's say, I can name it my generation. No surprise or no barriers to accept different race, gender, many differences keeping people. So diversity and inclusion kind of natural. They already are world citizens, and for them it's easy. You know, they just see human as human, and they do connections. They advocate. They are more on skills, on competences, on connection, but not really what I remember maybe 20 years ago, start of my career. It was really quite a hot topic to discuss diversity and inclusion. So this is what I see different, and I think this is positive and exciting.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I think something that you mentioned a little bit that allows me to dive deeper is, even in the opening remarks, I spoke about research showing that women are less likely to have sponsors and be more likely to be sponsors for others informally. So maybe what are your thoughts on thinking kind of in the future, but also in the moment of what are the ways the workplaces can correct that imbalance? So Geintha, maybe you have some thoughts on it.
I think we already mentioned a couple of those opportunities. Like, I think Bogdan talked a lot about networking, right? Building the relationships, and those don't happen overnight. You actually have to invest time in that. You have to bring people together with their interest groups, whether it's the Women's Networking League or Pancake Club that Bogdan mentioned, right? Regardless of what that interest group would be, bringing people together and letting them build the relationships and trust in each other, and having that as a kind of foundation in a culture in your company will help to have people who are more willing to sponsor, more willing to be champions of others, whether they women or not. I would also see it always starts with you individually. If you see someone who could benefit from a sponsor, from a recognition, find those opportunities. As simple as recognizing them publicly in a team meeting, or asking for their opinion if they are not speaking up, right? There are very subtle ways you can do that. So it could be from very big, sort of more company-based initiatives to what I am doing in order to promote my peers. And it's more your leadership style and your stance, more you know and develop that, and more you become sort of mature in that. Ramona, I think, has talked about that. More you are willing to champion others because you're not taking it as just your personal career. You are kind of looking at it more broadly. How can I help people around me, and how can I evolve the environment I'm in at work?
Yeah, but I don't know if you wanted to dive deeper on from a workplace perspective, what are some other ways that we can encourage women who statistically, traditionally have maybe not been as active in the championship space?
Maybe for me, coming from the Baltics, it's a little bit, how to say, uncomfortable to say what we still facing as we name issue. And in our countries like Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, I think female leadership is flourishing. So it's only up to us. Are we ready to make this smaller or bigger step, and how confidence today for young generation, we discussed previously, it's not anymore an issue. Young girls or ladies, they are really courageous, confident, they believe in, they trust in what they do. So it's more, are you ready? And if you are ready, just to raise your hand. And in corporation, for example, in Novartis, we really highly promoting opportunities. So just to raise your hand and to say what you want and do small step. No need to maybe biggest issue what as women we always try to be fully ready and to know everything, to be ready for next position or next level. And if you are a little bit are not ready, so you think what you are not fitting into this position. And sorry, gentlemen, but I think following men, sometimes you feel what they just go and do not overthink and not look deeper into I'm really ready. So I think this is advice maybe even. It's not about readiness. It's about do you want to take this next step or position or role, and don't ask yourself, I am ready or not. It's why not? You just make yourself clear what I wish, I wanna go, and I will do this next step. And of course, we can discuss long hours about family support and many things. What makes you really ready? But this is more about wish and not overthink.
I love kind of asking that question in those situations. What's the worst that can happen? Someone's going to say no. You know, if you fail, you are going to learn from that moment. And so, you know, there's obviously lots of subtopics on that risk taking. But yes, I think you are absolutely right that statistically and traditionally, there's a lot more hesitancy on that leap. Switching maybe the gender question here, Bogdan and Scott, looking at specifically male-dominated industries, how can men in leadership positions be effective champions for women?
Bogdan, why don't you take that first?
Cool, man. So, Christine, a couple of numbers, women represent half of the global graduates in STEM industries, science, tech, mathematics, and so on. Half, okay? So, no, you could not ask for a better number. Representation in corporate world in the past decade, beautiful number, has grown by 30%. Women representation in tech roles. So you could say that adoption and normalization of those representation areas is actually happening, okay? And it's been driven by culture, driven by society, driven by maturity of leadership styles and roles, and definitely but by what we actually do. I like a lot a saying by some famous YouTuber that culture happens in the room when the leaders are not there. Okay. So at the end of the day, you can say and do whatever, but are we actually living the reality of this? And to the previous speakers, I actually liked a lot one thing, someone was saying, speak up, have a voice, We actively encourage that in Microsoft. And I wanted, just for the fun of it, to paste in the chat, but it's not working. So bear with me. This is not Microsoft tech. So I wanted to paste my corporate signature, at the bottom of it, I have a big image, that it's all animated and flashy, and it says speak up. Okay. And this is actually us as leaders putting in action and in reality the things that we are saying. Okay. The culture change that we want to drive, the actual space and safety, we don't talk a lot about that, but the actual safety for someone to just reach out and say, hey, I want to learn more. Hey, I'm having trouble with this. I need some coaching. Hey, I'm struggling with my career. I need a perspective or a fresh perspective. And for me, to quote from a more modern culture, for those of you familiar with the Kung Fu Panda series, there is a beautiful saying there. When the student is ready, the teacher will show up. And in our life, I think, encouraging, you see talent, you see personality, you see smartness, and sometimes you see this in quiet people, they are not really comfortable to be brought into the light, to be, politely brought forward, challenged to grow, taken out of comfort space and so on. So this is, among others, probably one of the top responsibilities that we have to our colleagues, to our people, and to, the members of our community, let's say, if we have those roles in our lives, to encourage them to actually seek their values, to seek their talent, to seek their potential. And for me, the simple act of mentoring for impact, it's a beautiful word that we use a lot in Microsoft, mentoring for impact. It's just, it could be as simple as saying, hey, join me for this customer call, okay? Just join me, be there, see what's happening, see how we are handling things, see how we are approaching things. It could be just access to an experience that could just enlarge your, horizon and say, wow, some new things to learn, some new things to accumulate. And I want just to end on this thing, because we are talking a lot about championship and empowering, enabling women in the workplace. Coming back to just learning, okay, a very basic act of intellectual progress, we encourage people to learn all the day, all time, lifelong learners, we are used to the syntagm of lifelong readers, but the lifelong learners today with the young generations, with the changes that we see in the society, we are talking about artificial intelligence is like, I don't know, like the fifth revolution, industrial revolution, I'm seeing just amazing people stepping up and saying, okay, I'm passionate about this. How can I contribute? How can I learn more? How can I bring this energy forward? And this is on us as leaders to create this space of people reaching their potential. We have amazing colleagues in the region, in the Baltics, that are actually leading tech AI for Microsoft. We have amazing colleagues in, some other countries that are leaders in cybersecurity, for example. Can you imagine the difficulty of the topic, and yet very possible? And this is on us. I mean, very simple. It's on us to help our colleagues, to help our people be able to put this in motion. Otherwise, it's just blah, blah, blah. And, nothing happens in the end, But happy to be coming from an industry where we actually have the numbers to show that this is actually changing, and the trends are very encouraging on how talent and women are actually contributing to this.
That's really encouraging to hear. And, especially having that openness of elevating and asking, what's your solution? Scott, your take on men specifically being in leadership and stepping up to champion.
Yeah, I think Bogdan really has laid this out really well. One of the things that men can do, it seems so simple, but it is challenging for us sometimes. And that is to put yourself in someone else's shoes. Men are not typically required to do that growing up and coming up through corporate organizations. I'll give you an example that exists in the industry that I am in right now. And it's the game of golf. Golf is uniquely in the United States, especially in male-dominated industries, a form of networking and currency almost within business development. And there is something that's inherently challenging around that game as a business development tool because it is not as inclusive as other ways to develop business, to market, or to develop relationships. Fewer women play the game growing up. Fewer women are comfortable playing the game growing up. Fewer women, there are separate tees for men and women in the game. And as a man, as you think about little things like this and how they impact your colleagues that are women, your mentees that are women, even your mentors or supervisors who are women, as men, we need to think about what those things are that may exist within our culture that do distinguish between men and women in a way that can be challenging for women, especially in male-dominated industries. And I really do think the best way to sort of determine where those pain points exist is for men to ask. I think many men either think they are smart enough to figure out where those things are, or find out another way, maybe by reading. But if you ask your female colleagues, go to those colleagues, mentees, mentors that are women that you trust, you really will hear feedback that's really interesting around meeting time, meeting format, 1,000 things that exist in the workplace that if you ask your female colleagues, they have to experience differently than we do as men.
Thank you, Scott. And I think it's positive to see that the world is changing in that aspect, but there's still a lot of opportunity to go.
Yes.
I see a few things coming through the Q&A. We will be answering questions. I have a couple more questions for our panelists that are kind of specifically for each of them before we launch into Q&A. So as you are hearing something that sparks your thoughts, go ahead and type those in, and would love to continue that discussion. So as I want to dive a little specifically on each of your maybe experiences or just your unique takes on this, Ginthe, I want to start with you, and I want to have you dive deeper on what are some subtle and informal forms of advocacy that can be effective, especially when encouraging and promoting women or marginalized colleagues.
I think we already talked about a number of those previously. I would say one thing before we kind of jump into maybe informal ways to advocate for others. I think something that Ramune said earlier struck a chord with me. Ultimately, you as an individual are responsible for your career. You can get champions, you can get mentors, you can get sponsors, but ultimately it's about you and you deciding that I need someone to help me. So I think it's something to think about when you kind of think about your career, think about what do you need and how would you go and get that support. Reach out to people you are comfortable asking for that support and start there. As leaders, and I understand we have leaders joining us today on our call here, as team leaders, as organizational leaders, I would say encourage your teams, publicly recognize your colleagues. I think that's one of the subtle ways to put a spotlight on someone. And some people may not particularly crave that, like Bogdan was saying. There's people who may not want to be in the spotlight, but recognizing them and bringing their name up for the colleagues and making sure that people understand the skills and background of your colleagues is important. Creating space for informal time on your teams, for building networks, for building trust, that evolved culture. I think that's important. And then some of the other kind of very, very basic things that leaders can do the skip level meetings. If you're managing a team, make sure your teammate your members of your team get to meet your managers, your company leaders, arrange that. Invest time in providing feedback and providing constructive feedback. I think that is also one of the downfalls in our workplace and in general. People need to learn how to give feedback that is actionable. Invest time in learning how to do that, and then be proactive in providing feedback to people that are on your team. I think those are a couple of sort of very, very simple ways you can start. And then recognize the situations, be aware of your surroundings, be aware of your colleagues, recognize the situations where someone might need help, might need sponsorship, might need championship, but is not asking for that. That means listen to your colleagues, observe.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ginta. Bogdan, you talked a lot about Microsoft being such a community-oriented company worldwide, and I would love to hear a little bit more about how within such a metrics-based industry, what are some ways that organizations can reward that quiet leadership and that peer advocacy, maybe beyond what goes those metrics and the personal goals that have been reached?
Well, if you recall my earlier intervention, we talk a lot about impact in Microsoft, and I'm coming back to that because we are trained as executives, to look at probably unilaterally measures of performance, like, okay, metrics like, quota achievements, budget execution, ROIs, profitability, whatnot, okay? And I believe for true leadership, especially when we are talking about responsibility at large, not just on business, but okay, on people as well, on society, this measurement is incomplete, okay? Just saying, hey, I've done my quota, it's fine. It's just not enough in the modern workplace, especially if you want to actually use the workplace as a platform to develop, okay, to develop talent, to develop people, to develop obviously business potential, society potential at large. So how do you compensate that? Well, you make it part of the equation. And in our case, when we talk about impact, okay, impact is a very complex metric inside Microsoft, and we break it out in probably many pieces, but at least 3 are relevant for us today. One part of impact, and it's a sub-unitary measure, is not 100%, okay? It's sub-unitary. It's your job and your role, okay? What are you doing in your role? What have you achieved? So again, sub-unitary, okay? The second component of that is, how you are helping others. Very simple, very direct, okay? What is your contribution to the success of others? And then the third part is how you are actually getting inspiration from others and how you are deploying that in your own business. So there is already a pretty complex framework that you need to operate within, and I think it creates the space for leaders to thrive, to flourish, and to actually put into good action the words that we are saying all the time. Now, as a component of the contribution to the success of others, we are actually actively monitoring and listing diversity and inclusion as a core priority for managers in Microsoft. And diversity and inclusion is not just saying, part of my leadership team, in my case, for example, we have so many women in the group, that's just not enough. Because again, we talk about the concept of impact, how we are translating this in reality, how we are representing this in reality. So, for us, it could be, just mentoring early in career colleagues, helping guide them into the massive complexity of Microsoft. Or, for example, championing the chapter of women in cybersecurity in our home country, which could say, hey, but this is, so disconnected from women representation, where it is not. Some of the most amazing talent we have in this actually is women. So this is how you measure, you make true to your words, and you make it part of the equation, you make it part of how you're looking at leaders. And again, just having the courage to say, achieving your quota, achieving your target is great, but it's just a part of it. Actually drives a real action, in the workplace landscape. So this is how we do it, at least in our case.
No, that's actually really helpful. I think that for many on the call, impact is always such a hard thing to measure. So to have some of those things outlined by a successful corporation like yours, is hopefully good takeaways. Scott, what are the tools and policies or rituals you have seen help foster that culture of mutual advocacy?
Yeah, so I'll give one quick answer on this. This is a rule that I live by, and that is the rule of fellowship of the group. So if I am leading a team, every meeting begins with a moment of fellowship. It is, how was your weekend? What are you doing this weekend? It is not straight to work. This is an approach that some people really find challenging. There are types of people who don't want to hear about other people's weekend. But what I've always led with is the idea that for others in the room, this is the oxygen they breathe. It's the only way they can manage to feel a part of whatever it is that the group is trying to do. Now, recognize not everybody needs this, but it's that moment of fellowship, and you try and open and close with it whenever you can, that really binds the group together, and I think is a critical part of creating culture, camaraderie, and really fellowship within the team.
I love that, and I think it just helps you get to know, your leader and your colleagues within teams. So, lived experience that I think it's a really, really important piece. Final question will be for Ramona before we jump into some lightning round. Ramona, how do we hold ourselves accountable for championing others when it doesn't serve our immediate self-interest?
Yeah, maybe I will start from very practical and simple, like being female leader. So my observation and my experience during career was what as female leaders, as women, we are not supporting each other enough. So it means during my professional career, I was really getting a lot and enormous support from men, and men being in managers, operational managers, or peers position. But I would say a little support from women. So we need to be a little bit more in a group and really to pay attention. From professional and country head or country leader perspective, I think it's very simple things. Just introduce daily practice, like reflect on your values and try to connect or align values with behaviors. So it will be very natural, and you don't need to remind yourself what is your obligation. Reflect on impact. So previously speakers discuss a lot how important. Maybe feedback, one element, what not only provide feedback to people whom we are championing, but to seek feedback for ourselves, how I do in this particular role, and what is my level of championing others. So in Novartis, we really keep this practice, introducing surveys or asking live from our colleagues, just to get understanding I'm good in this or not. And finally, I think it's about collective success. So if you will not do for others, and you will not make sure what your team members and people around you will contribute at their full potential, so what is your, how you will reach your dream big scenario alone, you will not manage to do so. So this is collective success, and collective celebration is what we wanna all to observe and reach.
Yeah, I think you summed it up really well, because it's that value alignment. And if you know, being a champion for others is not within your value set, then it's just reevaluating what other values are. So, and hopefully we all, you know, want to do what is it? Do unto others as you wish is done unto you. In the interest of time, and everybody who's joined us, I think we're going to jump to some questions that have been submitted by our audience. So first one that I want to is actually addressed to you. You started off on a good topic. It would be nice to hear more on practical recommendation and said reality check situations for championship. So hopefully that's that. I think they're wanting just a little bit more practical experience on you know, being a champion and then having those reality checks.
Maybe it's once again coming back to what I mentioned in the very beginning. When you are growing as a leader, it's becoming so natural. What you are absolutely, it's kind of your daily incorporated, and you do it like a must. And what is reality check? This is feedback. It's feedback, and also following people whom you are championing. If they are doing one step forward, or they do one level up, it's already something what you can be proud. Or especially if you are getting feedback, what it was kind of your contribution. So this is reality check, and you have real life example.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. We also we had a question come through, and anybody can take this one. Can you touch upon effective championship in a failure situation?
Okay, let me try to pick that up. You know, in a very interesting concept. You know, in Microsoft, sometimes we like to talk about, you know, all of us being in sales, obviously, you know, to be expected. But there is a special flavor in sales that we are referring to, and that is consultative sales. Okay, because it's sometimes very straightforward just to, you know, take out an invoice, you know, send it up to your customer, wait for the wire, and that's it, you know. So very different than, you know, the reality check of life in the field, when you're actually helping companies use technology stacks, actually, you know, to drive potential for their business. So it's not just about sending an invoice, it's actually about listening, it's actually about consulting, it's about educating the customer before you go to actually closing the actual sale, okay? So this is not so easy, you know, it's not as easy as it looks like. And of course, from far, we are successful, we have the share to prove that, and everyone is happy. But day in, day out, you know, in the field, you actually have to be able to be successful at that. And sometimes you're not, okay? Just because you're trying, you know, it doesn't mean that, you know, it comes by design to your way. And, you know, sometimes, you know, we found ourselves at the intersection of goodwill and failure. You know, people are trying, they're just not getting it. And it's a fine act of leadership, I think, and coaching particularly, to be able to guide your colleagues, you know, within a failure. What do you do? Okay. How do you act on it? You know, how do you actually recover from the failure? And, you know, in the space of sales, there are so many things, you know, you get out from the door, you get in through the window, and so on and so forth, about resilience, grinding, and so on. But for me, the easiest coaching advice that I'm, you know, hopefully more often providing than not, is, you know, the learnings. What are the learnings in the failure? Okay, don't focus on the failure in itself. You know, nothing is forever. Even a failure is not forever. Also not success as well, but, you know, so nothing is forever. But what is the learning of that? You know, how are you, you know, presenting yourself? How are you coming through? How you are executing on the actual work at hand? So shifting slightly the mindset towards, you know, learning and evolving from the failure, I think makes failure actually useful. And this is just my personal belief. This is one of the most accelerated ways of learning. Not necessarily saying, you know, that you should fail a lot, but one of the companies that are actually giving real life examples of that is the former Facebook. You know, now I think they're called Meta, and their CEO has had a famous saying. You know, they said, "Move fast and break things," and of course, packaging in the nice way. He was talking about innovation, but also about sometimes innovation that is not successful, and, you know, being able to extract the learning of the failure, adapting to it, learning, moving forward, and again repeating the cycle. For me, this is, I think, you know, one way of looking at failure, and one way that we can actually guide, you know, within the face of failure. You know, it's our responsibility to build a safe environment so that people can actually fail safely. But okay, what do you do with that? So, you know, my first take would be, what do you learn from it? You know, what is this saying for what you're doing, for how you're doing things, and so on.
Yeah, it's failure is such an important part of the learning process. I want to be extremely respectful of our time. I know we're a couple of minutes over, but I have a fantastic question in the chat that I do not want to let go unanswered. So this will be the final question for all of you. The companies and individuals represented on this call clearly are continuing many important diversity and inclusion initiatives despite shifting public policies, particularly in the US. With evolving rhetoric around this, have these discussions influenced your company's commitment to these values? So don't all jump at once.
I'll start on this one. I'm so glad this question was asked, because I think it's a great question, really important, especially as it relates to US politics in this moment. My reaction to this and to the political environment we're seeing right now is simply to say that change is not linear. Right? Growth is not linear. And it is often, as progress is made, that you see steps back in between steps forward. And I think that may be some of what we are seeing now as it relates to some of the policies, certainly that I support. I don't want to put this on the LACC or anybody else for that matter. But I would say, to answer the question that was asked, Christine, none for us. We are not changing our policies. We have a great deal of confidence in the policies we have around DE&I, and we will continue to have those and support those.
Knowing that you all represent global companies, I don't know if Bogdan, Ramona, or Ginta, you want to comment on that. You're, of course, welcome to nod as well.
Well, I can't really comment about shifting policies in US, okay, because I'm based in Eastern Europe and covering Europe. But if it is, you know, to comment on a particular set of shifting policies, I would comment around education. And I've seen in the past year, and okay, maybe our position is privileged because you get to see a lot of what the countries are actually building when it comes to policies in education. I've seen actually not a modernization, maybe is not the right word, but kind of like, I think, incredible catching up with human potential lately, you know, in terms of policies. And I want to pick up just on one topic, artificial intelligence. I know it's super hot, everyone talks about it, but, you know, this is a policy that actually begins to shift. And you see government, you see institutions, you see companies adopting and putting this at good work, you know. So what better topic to bring back to the workplace and talk to your colleagues, you know, And to everyone you have in your life, I'm talking back home to my girls about artificial intelligence, and I'm telling them, hey, this is changing, okay? And of course, the shortcut is to use ChatGPT to do your math homework, okay? That's a beautiful topic to debate maybe for another forum, but this is life that will be reality for them. It is for us now, okay? But in 5 to 10 years, modern workplace will be reality for them as well. And this is actually something that it is within us as leaders, both at work and at home, to prepare, okay? To prepare and to enable the current and the future generations as well, okay? So for me, education is always a sweet spot, okay, when we talk about policies. And we can make things complicated, or we can simplify and say, okay, what's within our reach to influence, to improve, to help, to actually make it meaningful. So for my daughters, education is #1 priority at this age, and I hope even for a couple of more years. And I'm doing my best to bring inspiration to them, to say, okay, maybe you want to be a doctor, so how are you actually going to be a 2034 doctor? Okay, this is like, okay, 10 years from now, but get them thinking. And of course, from our position as adults and as leaders, you know that policies are changing, that society is changing, that the humanity is changing, okay? So translating that into, meaningful inspiration tidbits, for me, education is the perfect framework.
I think that's a beautiful note to end on, and just life is a continuous evolving learning journey. So I know several of you have sent me some resources that we will be sharing in a follow-up email with everybody with a recording. And so I just want to thank each and every one of you again for taking your time and spending an hour plus with us, just sharing your insights and your wisdom and experiences. And I think it's just really, really meaningful. So again, on behalf of AmCham Latvia and Latvian American Chamber of Commerce, we are just eternally grateful to all of you. This concludes our official programming. So for those that have stuck around, we'd love to have you an open invitation to join us for some informal networking in some breakout rooms. So if you're able to hang around and get to chat after, we'd love to have you. If not, we will definitely keep an eye out for different things that AmCham Latvia and LACC are putting forth, and there will be more conversations like this. So if you enjoyed today, stay tuned. So thank you again, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.